listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion is gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is Tracie Harris.
Howdy.
Somebody wrote to me before the show, concerned, saying, is there something wrong with Matt that you're not telling us? No, he's just traveling in Omaha, so I believe he'll be back. Next weekend is the Bat Cruise, and I think the powers that be are doing their best to make sure that there is at least an hour show and possibly a 2-hour show, because there's going to be tons of people traveling to Austin. So, open house at the ACA building at noon, PZ Myers lecture at 3, I believe, and then the Bat Cruise is at 6. So see you guys there. Today is Sunday, September 22nd, 2013. We're a live call-in public access atheist TV show promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state out of Austin, Texas. We're live streaming on ustream.tv. You can check out the official show website at atheist-experience.com. Leave feedback at freethoughtblogs.com/axp or send us direct email to tv@atheist-community.org. If you like this show, check out the other two shows. The Nonprofits and Godless Bitches are both recording new episodes, although it seems like the Godless Bitches website has been out of commission for a little while, right? It's back now.
I hope it's back.
You hope it's
getting
back.
Complaints, so yeah. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
someone says it's back.
Yeah, so I think it's back up. I'm not sure if the latest episodes have been uploaded yet, but both shows are definitely going on, so hooray.
It is
Godless
hooray.
Bitches, still the best podcast in Austin, according to the Austin Chronicle. And the next Nonprofits will be recorded Wednesday, October 2nd. As always, we'll be going to South Threadgills on 301 West Riverside Drive. After the show, you can meet up with us there at around 6 p.m.
If you're hungry.
If you're hungry, yeah. What's up, Tracie?
Oh, not much. Just doing a lot of yard work for the first day of fall and good weather here in
All
Austin.
right, just in time
awesome
for
weather.
Talk Like a Pirate Day. Yarr.
Arr. Yeah, so I wanted to just hit on indoctrination again. I've talked about it before, but I just don't think I can talk about it enough. And I just think about my own experiences, and kind of, part of what motivates me to do the program is helping people get their lives back and getting their heads out of indoctrinated states. And so what I'd like to do is I've described it before, but I'm going to describe it again because I think it's important. I think it needs to be described. If you are a young person and you don't feel like you believe a God exists, but you're concerned about it, you're concerned about your immortal soul, you're afraid of hell, you're praying and begging for a sign, and you're asking God to please show you, that God exists, because you just, you keep going to church and they keep telling you about this, and you're just so worried and stressed out, and what if this is all true and I can't make myself believe it, and that's what indoctrination does to you. It works in such a way that it makes you pressure yourself when the pressure's not on. So when you're in church, you get the pressure, you get the hard sell of, you get the songs, and you get the preacher doing the call to baptism at the end, come on down and be saved. And when you're not at church, you've been taught to torture yourself. So that you will pressure yourself to try to make yourself believe.
Right.
And
there's a lot of standard traits of cultish behavior, from like isolating you from your friends and family if they are non-believers, and also like love bombing people and blasting sort of music or rhythmic chanting at them while they're there kind of breaks down your resistance.
And that sort of separation from other people doesn't have to be a physical thing. I mean, when a lot of times we think about like Amish societies where they have their own sort of secluded areas where they'll stay and they have their own sort of culture, but it doesn't have to be that way. I can remember when I was in church being taught over and over again that we're in the world but not of the world, that the world is this separate thing, and that people that weren't in the church were worldly and they were of the world. And so even though you interacted with them and you were in that, you had to see yourself as separated. So they accomplished the same thing mentally without actually pulling you out of society.
Even sticking with the example of the Amish, like the Amish have this thing called, isn't that an Amish thing, Rumspringa, where they get to go out in the world when they come of age, and they go out and they hang out for like a week or a month or something like that, and then they get to decide whether to come back or not. But the thing is, they've lived their entire lives in this Amish community.
The deck is stacked.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, a guy with no friends and no connections going out in the middle, going out into the world and like not being familiar with anything out there is going to have a terribly good first impression.
Correct.
And there's a very high return rate.
And again, even, you know, when you're involved in a situation where someone's indoctrinated you and trying to indoctrinate you still, you will have a similar experience, except that it's not that open, it's not that obvious. So what happens is they raise you with all these Bible truths, and they'll raise you with this really messed up view of everything, basically telling you that human beings are basically bad, that human beings are not trustworthy, that your reason is not you can't trust your own reason, you have to have faith because God knows better, you know, morally, God knows better knowledge-wise, God knows all this stuff that you don't know, and so you just have to trust and you just have to obey. And the idea then is you have all these things that you're taught, like you have this very stringent sexual model where you don't have any kind of sex, and you know, might have, depending on the teachings, they might tell you that it's wrong to even think about sex, or that, so all these things that are normal human things, you're being told this is all wrong and this is no good. And then what happens is you get out into the world and you're not believing, and you might try stretching your wings a little bit, and you do some things and you're not really prepared because you've never had somebody sit down and talk to you in a realistic way about sex or in a realistic way about life. And so they didn't sit you down and say, it's okay if you have these thoughts, it's okay if you have sex. We just want to make sure that you're being responsible and that you're being prepared and that you know what you're getting into, that you've thought this through and that you've considered it. So you get a lot of people that are raised in fundamentalist religions. They go out into the world and they may actually try like rebellion, or they may try to go out and do some things on their own and leave their church and leave those teachings, but they've never been prepared in any sort of realistic way to deal with real life. They've only been taught this very weird black and white, non-realistic framework of how the world works and how relationships work and what reality is. And
I'm reminded of one of my all-time favorite Onion stories. Okay. The headline is, "Horribly awkward first sexual encounter, worth the wait."
Yeah. No, I know that's a good one to actually bring up. But yeah, the concept is you'll try to go out and live life on your own without this teaching, and then when it doesn't work, that's sort of like in your head the test of it. And you come back and you're like, you know, if I hadn't had sex, or if I hadn't done this thing or that thing that the church says I shouldn't have done, then you know, everything would have been so much better, and look at the mess I've made, and I really can't run my life, and you know what, this religion really does know better. And so you go running back to this religion because it's comfortable and it's the only thing you've been taught. And yeah, it'll work to avoid the problem, sort of like, you know, not eating will allow you to never eat anything poisonous, but it's not okay to go your whole life not eating because you don't want to eat something poisonous. You have to learn how to eat well. You have to learn how to do things well. You don't just avoid them like they're bad because there's certain risks involved. There's risks involved in everything you do in life. anything you do in life. When you drive out of your driveway in the morning, you are taking a risk. Nobody says car accidents happen and the solution is no one should drive. Everyone needs to just cut up their driver's license and get rid of their cars and scrap them, because driving is evil. Just look at all the deaths on the road and the injuries and the accidents and the cost involved in this horrible system we have of transporting cars. You could paint anything horrible if you just look at the negatives and you never look at how to do it safely.
And if you did have some crazy anti-driving cult and people listened to them, you wouldn't come up with decent solutions like traffic laws and interstate highways and stoplights and things.
Yeah, I mean, in the church, they actually will say that if you're having sex and you're using birth control or condoms, that you are trying to, quote, avoid responsibility. Mm-hmm. They'll say that that's avoiding responsibility. No, that's being responsible.
In some cases, even if you're married, where you have the Quiverful movement encouraging people to just, have a baby every year.
But in their heads, anybody that has sex should be punished, and anybody that's, that is not having sex is doing the right thing. And so you don't have sex, it's 100%, you'll be safe and you won't have any of these problems like pregnancy and STDs. And it's the same as saying if you never drive, you're not going to have an auto accident. Well, it's true, but is that a realistic solution? No, it's not. It's completely asinine. And so they're teaching you some really messed up stuff, but it's going to work better than you going out on your own completely ignorant of how the world really works and then failing. And then when you run back, you say, okay, this did work. See, it's evidence that it does work because it's so much better than when I tried it on my own. It's not a fair test. They have crippled you as far as going out there and actually testing it. I'm not saying that nobody can get out there and make a successful life outside of this that's been raised in an indoctrinated state. I'm talking specifically now to young people who are scared, that are scared of hell, that are scared of what's going to happen to your soul after you die, and all this fear. And what you want is God to send you some sign because you're having trouble making yourself believe, but you really want to believe because it would be so much better than all the stress and doubt that they have drilled into your head. And I'm sitting here today to tell you that I was that person when I was younger, and I am today not in the church. I don't believe in God, and I am not afraid. I'm not scared. And you can have that. You can have an existence where you choose non-belief, where you are not afraid, where you understand this isn't real, and that you're not in doubt. They try to tell you that anybody that's not doing this, you're going to spend your life in fear and doubt forever. No, you're not. You're not. You're not going to spend your life in fear and doubt any more than you spend your life in fear and doubt about vampires, right? And I used this example in an email recently where I was talking about how Pascal's wager is when they threaten you and say, oh, you've got so much to lose, and what if you're wrong? And it's like, what if I'm wrong about vampires and I'm not hanging garlic on my door and I get attacked by vampires? Well, whatever. I can't go around worrying about everything that somebody says exists that I don't have evidence exists and what it might do to me if I'm wrong. That would be an endless list of crazy. And so if you're not, ask yourself, if I'm not afraid of vampires and I'm not taking precaution for vampires, if I'm not sleeping with, a gun with a silver bullet every night in case the werewolves attack, and I'm not hanging garlic to keep the vampires at bay, why am I terrified of a hell when I don't believe in God, when I'm begging for a justification to believe because I just can't believe and I want to make myself believe? And there's no reason. This fear and this pressure that's coming out is coming out because someone has messed with your head. They have really messed with your head. And it's hard to see it because that's all you've known. But I'm telling you, that is a sign that you have been indoctrinated, that someone has put into your head a mechanism to pressure yourself when they're not around. And you can overcome that, and you can live and be happy and not be plagued by these doubts any more than you're plagued by stress about vampires or stress about werewolves or anything else like that. You can get past it. They're lying to you when they say you'll spend your life in fear and doubt. It's an absolute lie. You won't. And you can get over it. And I'm telling you that because I've done it. So I know it can be done. The other thing that I wanted to hit, that's my indoctrination speech.
I have not.
Have not what?
I have not had to get over religious indoctrinated specifically.
Yeah. But yeah, we get so many letters from people saying either they're afraid of hell or writing to us saying, thank you, I'm no longer afraid of hell.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah. When we get an email that says, I rationally don't believe in hell, but I'm still afraid of it. I'm not afraid of hell, and I never have been. So I feel like I should just kick that over to one of you guys.
Yeah. And when I did start to believe, it's really funny because when I finally, convinced myself, I got my quote sign or whatever, and it's embarrassing to even think what I would accept for justification. But when you're looking for anything to justify it, you'll accept whatever comes your way. So I took a really weak, quote sign. At the time, I thought it was, so much, and now looking back, it's just like that was pathetic. And that's why people often don't want to tell you why they really believe in God. They throw all these apologetics out at you, but they don't want to say, here's the real reason, because it's weak. And mine was weak as well. And so but when I finally believed, let me tell you, the relief, the sense of relief. I didn't have to worry about hell anymore. I didn't have to worry about my immortal soul. There wasn't any what if I'm wrong. I know there's a God, and I was so comfortable with that. And thank you, God. You helped me get over all this stress and all this horror and all this uncertainty and doubt. And I didn't ever realize until much later in my life that all that stress and doubt was put into me to force me to adopt that belief, to take anything, and I could possibly take any crumb of anything to make myself say, okay, there's a God, because they wanted me to want to escape all that doubt. And so anyway, just saying that after the fact, while I was a Christian, if you would have told me that I had, adopted it because of fear, I would have said, no. It's about God's love. God loves us, and He helps us, and He saves us, and God is wonderful. God was wonderful because He saved me from all that horror, right? All that stress and that awful situation. And so I wouldn't, as a Christian, have admitted it, and I wouldn't have been lying. I just simply didn't see it that way then. But I see it clearly now, what was done. And I see it done to people all the time. And it's really distressing to see this done to children. But this is what they do to them. And when a Christian tells you that they don't fear, they're not kidding. But please notice how many times they use Pascal's wager. For people that aren't afraid, they sure are into, but what happens if you're wrong? And they sure are into, how do you not live your life in horror and doubt? I mean, don't you want to get rid of that doubt? And why are you seeking? And why? And it's like, okay, you don't know me, because I'm not afraid. I'm not doubtful. I'm not seeking. I already been through that ringer, and I'm not going back into it. And it wasn't salvation from all that stress. You put the stress in me to make me adopt the belief. And I reject the belief now, and I reject the stress. I don't have either, and I'm fine. And you can be too. That's kind of my thing.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I did have something else. I don't know if you wanted to start calls and just, it wasn't like a big deal to talk about the next thing. So if we want to do calls and just skip
you want to just take Jeff first and then
Sure, whoever.
and then get back to what you were saying?
Sure.
Jeff in Fresno.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about biblical cosmology and how the Bible details science. I used to be an atheist.
Mm-hmm. You've called before, haven't you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Everyone used
My
to
mistake.
be an atheist.
I used
true.
to be an atheist. I used to burn pages of the Bible and smoke pages of the Bible and stuff.
Why?
Because I was just an atheist and I thought it was funny.
Okay.
But I realized
I'm an atheist and I wouldn't see the point, but go on.
It's all right, go ahead.
Okay, but I was really into physics, and I realized that the Bible is like borderline physics book. It has.
Okay.
And physicists have told you this, or?
Well, yeah, cosmologists, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Because Time magazine in December.
The esteemed physicist of
Peer-reviewed
Time
journal.
magazine.
Yeah.
Well, it says most cosmologists agree that Genesis is accurate, and
What?
the Bible has accurate depictions of cosmology.
When did they say that, and what were they basing it on?
They're basing it off on science.
They were basing it on science.
Yeah.
Just science. Nothing in particular, just science.
Well, I'll get.
I'm not aware that the Bible even makes any scientific
I'm not
claims,
willing
but-
to take Time magazine as an authority on this claim.
Okay, well, in Job 26, it says, he hangs the earth upon nothing. Now, at that time, they thought that the earth sat on a turtle. You know, the whole
Who
story
thought
with
that?
Who thought? Yeah.
in the 1500s BC.
Well, who though? Who specific? Do you think the whole world thought that?
You think absolutely
Most of them.
everyone bought the
You have
turtle
got to be
story
kidding me.
except for the Bible
Do you
people.
understand how segmented societies on the globe are? I mean, really? You think somebody in the Amazon thought the world sat on a turtle?
Well, most of them
Ancient
did.
Chinese culture didn't have the turtle
I'm
thing.
starting to really have issues
Well,
with this call.
Chinese thought it had like some samurai held the world or something.
No, they didn't. You're just making this up, dude.
He's making it up.
Yeah, you're not only
Okay.
making it up, but you're actually trying to screw with us, and that's not cool.
No, not at all.
Yeah, not all that funny either.
So everybody believed that the world sat on a turtle, even though the whole world wasn't
Yeah.
even in communication with each other. They just, how mystical was that they all just came to
Right.
the same conclusion about this turtle? Maybe they were
Like,
right.
I feel the impulse to tell Jeff how obvious a troll he was, but then I don't want to be giving trolls advice about how to improve their
Yeah.
act.
Yeah, when you start off with, I used to smoke the Bible,
Right.
it's not good.
Yeah, I do not believe that. Okay, that was short. Derek in Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Bo Russell. Hi, Tracy. How's everything?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks to nobody, because I can't say thanks to God, because no God anyway. So, anyway, listen, I'm just to give you a little story about me. I'm 42 years old. I'm born in Puerto Rico. I'm raised in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of the United States, and we got two constitutions. We have the Constitution of Puerto Rico and the Constitution of the United States. But people over there very deeply religious. I'm atheist. I'm 42. I've been atheist since I was 14, because when I was looking at the world around me, I was looking at the people, different members of my family and friends that they were, in different versions of Christianity. They were involved, some of them they were Catholics, some of them they were Jehovah's Witnesses, some of them they were Pentecostal, and they were all talking about how great God was, how good it was, to go to be part of the church and everything. But at the same time, they were talking bad about other people. There was too much hypocrisy, especially when they were talking about other religions. And I'm talking about people within Christianity. And that hypocrisy was so sickening that at that young age, at 14, when you're 14, you don't know nothing. I say, this thing can, it can be a God that can, can allow, people that they claim to be, believers, people that really, believe in love your neighbor and everything, allow, something like this to happen. There cannot be no God, I said. So from that point on, I decided to be atheist. Right now, I got a good friend that is
Derek?
Pentecostal.
Derek?
I'm sorry, I'm going to shut up. I'm sorry, I don't know you guys were talking. Go ahead.
I just, do you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I got a question. Which way do you guys normally handle people? Like, for example, it's kind of experience that is a question at the same time. How you handle people that they are like devoted Christians, that they said, that they're willing to do whatever God says. If God told them, to kill their own son or whatever. How do you guys handle people like that? Because, it's really shocking. I had a Christian tell me that. I told him, what? God tells you to kill your own son. Will you kill it? And they told me, yeah. How
Okay, it's all
do you
right.
guys deal with people like that?
Derek, are you talking about like what would be a counter apologetic to that kind of a position?
Yeah, because
Okay.
Or are you-
with my own
I'm
conclusions.
thinking
Go ahead.
Euthyphro.
Okay.
I would go at it from like a Euthyphro dilemma. There's something called the Euthyphro dilemma, and what it basically asks is how do you? It asks a more classical question, but what it's getting at is how do you know your God is moral? And so with the Christians specifically, what they normally say is that they can't trust their own moral tendencies, but they can trust God's moral tendencies because God is moral, right? That it's like his nature or something. And the question is, is morality just whatever God tells you to do, or is morality more than that? Because if it's just whatever God says, then there really isn't, then morality becomes just arbitrary. But if there's actually things that are moral, that you can judge, that you can say this is or isn't moral, then you would have to judge that. And if you believe that God judged it, the question is, how do you know? Since you're not able to trust your own moral gauge, how do you know that the morality that God is handing you is a good one?
I think but I think Derek is asking how they can argue directly with the people who've already said, I trust God so much that I'd kill my own son. And I think this really gets back to your topic of indoctrination, because there are certain people that I don't really think are worth arguing with. And when they're so far indoctrinated that they can't see what's wrong with saying that, I would rather not even try to reason with that person. I would rather just try to make an example of them and draw other people's attention to them and say, wow, look how far gone this guy is. Religious morality warps your sense of actual morality so badly that this guy would be willing to kill his own son.
Yeah, I think if you're online, if you're arguing at a forum, but I think Derek might be talking about family and people that he knows. And
well, do you think they mean it?
I would I don't know if they mean it or not, but I mean, if push came to shove, maybe they really wouldn't do it, you would hope. But I would just think that trying to get at why they trust this God so much would be the question. Why do you trust this thing that you can't actually gauge whether or not it's moral because you don't trust your own morality? So based on what do you trust this thing,
Yeah. Well, because this is what I said. I just wanted to hear your point of view, because it's just I try to use different ways to handle this particular, because I try this at Christians just to see how deep into their religion they are, to see if I can just put the argument into, put it like in corner them. See how, the both Christians are. Well, I was saying that because sometimes they tell me, I do what God tells me because the Bible says so. So I tell the people, okay, so do you realize, probably you don't know this, but do you realize that the Bible that you love so much, number one, it's like badly translated, and many of the words in the Bible that doesn't really mean what they say, number one, and number two, there's not original scrolls of the Bible, there's copies of copies of copies.
Yeah.
So, how do you know that that's true? Right. You understand? What evidence you got? I tell them, so who knows if you're following the wrong belief? In my opinion, all beliefs are wrong, but, when it comes to religion, but in particular in Christianity, and I even tell them, do you realize that there are 7 billion people in the world? And from all the people who live in the world, only 2 billion are Christians, and that's 5 billion that believe in all the things. So what makes you think that your belief is true, and everybody else is wrong? And then within Christianity, there's so many versions of Christianity. So what makes you believe that your version is right and every other Christian is wrong? So I try to tell that. So are you willing to kill your own son based on a belief that might be wrong?
Derek, I just want you to know that you can't always win these arguments one-on-one. I mean, that's something that you have to come to grips with, that you can't necessarily make everybody come around to your way of thinking. You can have the discussions, and you can talk to people who are maybe a little bit more susceptible, but I think I don't necessarily advocate sort of the whole agree to disagree approach when it comes to sticking to your principles, but I do say that in your personal relationships with people, there's not always a point in just, banging your head on this particular wall to the bitter end.
Well, I don't try to antagonize them or anything. I just say, I try to avoid, I try to keep my friendship on board, those arguments, but let's put it this way, if I get attacked, I don't defend myself.
Well, sure.
I understand that's the way I do it. I don't want to let these people, walk over me, because we are constantly under attack.
There's nothing wrong with just being really blunt, and if you get them saying, well, I would kill my son, then you can just say something really direct, like, well, I think that's horrible. And I think that my atheist morality is better than your religious morality. And just leave it at that. I mean, that's kind of outside the realm of something you can reasonably argue with.
Yeah, I told him that my secular morality is superior to your morality because I'm not willing to kill my own son just because of a belief that cannot be confirmed.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I think we're going to move on.
All right, no problem. Listen, I appreciate that. Maybe I might try to call you guys next week when there is a host and come up with another topic of that. But thanks for your show. I really learned a lot.
Okay.
From your show,
Thanks.
how to deal
Thanks
with
for
these
watching.
Okay, that's fine to let Derek go. But I really don't encourage people to try to think of topics or reasons to call.
Yeah.
If you have a reason to call, call. If you don't. But please don't.
Right, we don't need filler topics. We would like to answer people's real questions that are actually on their mind.
There are sufficient people who actually have a reason to call, so don't strain yourself trying to help us out by thinking of topics.
But thanks for watching.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Do you want to finish up?
No. Let's go on.
Okay.
We're having a good time.
All right, we've got the momentum on the calls now.
Yeah, people are waiting. So
Adam in Wisconsin. Adam?
Hey, Adam.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I love you guys. You guys are amazing.
I love you too, Adam.
Doesn't take much to impress Adam.
You guys have given me the confidence to take on any theist that they can throw at me.
People are throwing theists at you?
Well, not literally,
Okay.
But, okay, my question is, my dad he's really, really hard to talk to about, well, mainly religion and politics also, but mainly religion. And now that I've been watching your shows and numerous debates and such, I think I'm ready to talk to him. And he's a big fan of the Bible. I know he listens to it on audiobooks and such. And
Adam, wait a second here. What was your motive to talk to your dad?
Well, usually for the past, I'm 36 now, and usually I just nod yes, and listen to him. But I'm ready to tell him that I'm an atheist, and I want to know how can I talk to him without causing a fight, because he is very difficult and he's very hard-headed. He's very stubborn.
So I think you should think really hard about what your objectives are when you're going to talk to your dad. Because if your objective is to maintain a good relationship with him, then being an awesome lawyer about how to argue for atheism effectively and kick the crap out of Christianity may not be your best approach.
Right. I could do that, but I don't want to. No, I don't.
So does your dad think that you share his beliefs?
You know what? I don't know. I think it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell type of thing, but my mom knows because they make comments. I have 2 young boys, so they make comments about, do you really know what Christmas is about?
To your kids, they say this?
Yeah, my parents will say this to my kids. They'll say, do you really know what Christmas is about?
And your mother knows that you're an atheist?
Yes. Well, yes. I don't think she knows to what degree I am, but I've told her I don't believe in God and Jesus and none of the stuff they raised me to believe. I told them I don't, and I'm raising my kids to think for themselves and make their own choice, And so they'll say, well, what is Christmas about? And my boys, they're the cutest things. They'll say, it's about family and giving and love. And my mom will say, well, yeah, it's about that, but it's mainly Jesus. And my kids will listen and nod, and I'll let her and my dad talk to them about that. But
have you told them about the Jesus story preemptively so they don't just hear it from your parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I try and tell them, a lot of the major Bible stories.
Yeah.
There's a couple of really entertaining videos online that are cartoony.
Okay.
And I show them to my kids, and it's like Noah's Ark and stuff, and we just laugh so hard. And I try and tell them the major things about that.
Okay.
Right.
But
so your dad
but-
doesn't know you're an atheist, and you're...
No, I don't think so.
You want to let him know mainly in order to be true to yourself and not have to hide what you think in conversations. But you still...
Absolutely.
But you still want to keep a decent relationship with your dad.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, from my past experience with other people with religious family, can be difficult. I think
Right.
there's no getting around that. I mean, you know, I know people who have wound up being kind of alienated from their family,
Well,
not through their direct choice.
Here's
but,
the thing,
yeah.
too, though, just to say, there's some people who tell us, like, my parents are really cool and my parents are really open-minded, and then they write us back and say, oh my gosh, my parents just flipped out.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes people think their parents are going to flip out and their parents are cool about it. They're not happy, but they're cool.
I think they'd be more really disappointed but cool. I mean, I don't think they'd go as far as to like disown us and be like, "Don't come back and visit," and you know, none of that.
But you're
stuff,
describing your dad
unless-
as pretty stubborn and pretty into
Yeah.
the Bible and pretty. I mean,
Yeah.
you're already describing him as the type of parent I would expect to not take it well. and I'm just saying
Right.
that there's some people that go into it expecting their parents will take it really well, and they don't. And if someone's going into it already with a description of a parent that sounds like they're not going to be too pleased, I guess what I generally tell people is imagine the worst case scenario that you think could realistically occur, and then expect that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is some good advice.
Yeah, I mean, that said, I would think that the kind of approach I would take would be not so much to be prepared to defend the intellectual rigor of atheism, but to defend yourself as, you know, this is what I think, and I'm still your son whom you love, and I'm still a good person, no matter what you think about whether it's possible to be a good person without morals, and be prepared to like repeat yourself a lot, like, you know, not necessarily to say, well, Pascal's wager is stupid, but just to say, that's what you think. I don't agree with you about that. And I'm sorry that you're angry right now. And maybe be prepared to also end the conversation when it's getting too heated, and maybe take it up another time. Dealing with
that's
relatives,
good advice right there with them.
Yeah, dealing with relatives can be tricky.
Yeah. I mean, we're not the best of friends in the first place. I mean, we kind of talk cordially, and you know, the small talk and bullshit, how's work and stuff like that. But I mean, I know he loves me, and I know that this won't majorly. I really doubt it would majorly affect anything. But I like you said, I want to be true to myself, and you know, I find myself not just with my dad, but with people I don't necessarily need to tell I'm an atheist, but I feel like I should, just because I'm a good person, and I want to show people that atheists are good people, you know, that we care, not because the Bible tells us we should, but because we want to.
Sure.
And, you know, I guess that's really important to me, is just I want everyone to know exactly where I'm coming from, whether they like it or not. And I'm telling my kids the same thing. You know, you need to stand up for what you believe in, and you know, go out there and try and learn all you can.
Yeah, from a family situation, you might want to take the tack of making sure that you don't get into an argument about theism and atheism, and just kind of like, you know, keep it like what Russell was talking about. Just say, look, you know, I didn't bring this up to argue. I just brought it up to let you know, because I don't think you were aware. And make of it what you will. You know, like Russell said, I'm still your son. We're still family. I don't have a problem. I understand this is what you believe. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it's not quite, you know,
and
I mean, same on my
maybe
end.
You could also promise him that you could have the atheist Christian debate later, once he's had a little time to process it. Because right there in the heat of the moment, you know, believing that your son is now a person who's going to be tortured forever is a lot to process in the first place. So maybe deal with, you know, deal with the direct emotional impact first, and then say, you know, I'd really like to have an intellectual discussion, but not for like a few months.
And I wouldn't create a situation where it becomes an announcement You might just want to wait, since your dad talks about this stuff a lot, maybe just wait till it comes up organically and just be like, yeah, I'm not sure that I believe that. You know, maybe sort of just work it in as a normal part of the conversation.
I don't believe that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it depends on what dad is saying.
That won't be hard to fit in because it comes up often.
Sure,
I mean,
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Sure.
your advice. You guys are terrific. Keep up the work and go take down some theists.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck, Adam.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Denver in Rhode Island.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Okay.
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm a Catholic, and I just had a question for you guys. I don't know how long I'm going to be on the phone since I have bad connection, but I'll try to get it out if I can. My question is, do you think that their religion has done any good things in the world, like impacted people's beliefs? Like, for example, Martin Luther King, when he was for helping civil rights, like he was very influenced by his religion to help get people civil rights.
I can save you some time here, Denver. We get this question a lot, and mainly. Oh, hold on. There's an echo.
We lose him. Denver, you still there?
Hello?
No, that's too bad.
Well, I can
would have
answer him
liked to talk to him longer.
offline. Generally, you know, the statement that I would put forward based on your question would be something akin to: people will do good things and have good tendencies and good instincts. A person who is in an oppressed community, I think, is going to be very concerned with, for example, equality and, you know, justice on that level. The idea that they have a religion as part of their worldview, of course they're going to gear that toward what they already believe and what they'd like to accomplish. I don't think that the religion should take credit for what people are doing that they would do otherwise. So, for example, there are plenty of people that oppose slavery and racism who are not believers, and those people do so because they understand why it should be opposed. So the religion sort of takes credit for things that good people do. I don't think that the religion makes them do it. I think that the people are using the religion as a mechanism to do it. And in some ways, that is a good thing because historically, religion has come in and, I guess, pulled people together and given them like a social construct where they could come together as a group and do things interdependently, which always makes people more productive. But I do think that that could be achieved as well without the woo, without the supernatural beliefs. I think that you could just have a community sort of situation where everyone comes together and does good things, and they don't need to have any sort of supernatural things attached to it. It's almost like the story of the stone soup, where, if you're not familiar with it, a guy comes into town and he has a magic rock. He picks up the rock before he comes into town, and he comes in and he says the rock is magic, and you throw it in a pot and it makes the best soup you've ever had. And so the townspeople are laughing and mocking, but he's swearing on the rock, and so they get this big pot of water and they start boiling. He throws the rock in. And as time goes on and people are drinking and laughing, and he's saying things like, you know, it gets really better if you put an onion in there. And so people bring onions, and they're like chopping up the onions, and he's like, yeah, and some potatoes really helps it out as well. Ultimately, they end up making like a pot of soup. And everybody has a big pot of soup, the whole town, and they're all happy, and they all ate well, and they drank, and they had a good story from this guy, and he leaves, and everyone's, you know, happy about the story about the rock. But the point is, the stone didn't make the soup, the people made the soup. And it would be really wrong to credit the stone. So I feel that religion takes credit for a lot of good things that people do. And I think when people feel desperate and they, for example, come through something and they pray for help or inspiration, and they see that as getting them through, what I really see there is somebody who got themselves through it, but they were robbed of the credit for having done what they did by a religion that tells them they have to not take credit and they need to thank God. And I don't think that this God model should be stealing the credit for people who have seen themselves through a tough time or seen themselves through things. The fact that they're there and they did it means that they can do it.
I do want to add some stuff. Our main objection to religion is that it encourages people to believe things that aren't true, or at least believe things that they don't have any reason to think are true. And sometimes the things that they think turn out to be nice and productive things. And like in Martin Luther King's case, I would not dismiss the fact that Martin Luther King was a great fighter for civil rights, and that he felt inspired by his interpretation of religion as one of the driving forces in his life. On the flip side, you have a lot of guys in like the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries who believed very strongly that what they read in the Bible plainly said it was okay to own slaves, and even good for the slaves in some cases. And you would find long treatises justifying the Southern practice of slavery by pulling up certain Bible quotes. And a lot of, and not only anti-abolitionists, but also anti-civil rights leaders like the Ku Klux Klan was also very, very driven by their religion. Now, I'm not blaming the religion for their actions any more than I'm crediting the religion for the actions of Martin Luther King. I think that religion, you asked if religion actually does any good things. I think that religion does some things like, in particular, organize people. People have built beautiful cathedrals because of churches, because in the Middle Ages, the churches had all the money. And they were able to rake in piles of money from people. And as a side effect, they built beautiful works of art because they figured those were tributes to God. The fact that we disagree with the basis of the religion doesn't dismiss the fact that maybe those cathedrals wouldn't have been built, and maybe these incredible masses by talented composers might not have been written without that sort of inspiration.
But maybe some people would have been fed.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, our position is not religion is an unmitigated disaster and does only bad things in the world. It's just that, like Tracie said, it's not really necessary, and I think in some ways it's ethically neutral, or would be if it weren't for the fact that it encourages people to believe things that they can't possibly know are true, which I don't think is a virtue in any way.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I have seen people struggle with things that they know are not correct. So there will be somebody who thinks that, like the anti-gay stance is wrong, and they struggle with that, but they're in the church and they believe when they're reading the Bible that it's telling them that homosexuality is, an abomination. And so they struggle to make themselves agree with it and make themselves believe it, even though internally they know that that's not correct. So
right.
It has that impact where people will subjugate themselves to it, and sometimes that can be really harmful when they're subjugating to something that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Seth in California.
Hello, Seth?
Seth?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, sorry.
It's all right.
Okay. Yeah, my question was, okay, I am an atheist, and I have a lot of LDS friends and family, and they're really great, but I often like to have conversations with them, and the LDS faith is very interesting, because they don't believe in
Latter-day Saints, right?
Yeah, Latter-day Saints, I'm sorry,
which is Mormonism, right?
A branch of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, they believe in their different kingdoms, so no one really goes to hell, which makes it difficult for me because I'm trying to present the issue of finite and infinite punishment.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't be married to the one argument. I mean, it's fine and good to have like a great argument against something that they don't believe, but if they don't believe it, then what's the point? You're on the same page already.
Oh, okay, I see. So you're saying that it's really not worth making the argument?
Well, not if that's not what they believe.
Yeah.
Why would you argue against something they don't believe? What's the point?
Right. It's like saying, well, I don't know about you, but I think axe murdering people is wrong, and here's all my reasons why. We don't really have those conversations with people who already agree with us.
Okay, I see.
Which is why, if you listen to the show a lot, you'll often hear people opening with the question, what do you believe and why do you believe it? Because you're trying to have a conversation about what people actually think, not about your preconceptions about what they should think.
So is the call to ask, I'm not even sure I understand what you're asking. So you're saying that the argument for finite crimes being punished infinitely, of course, it's an injustice. And the LDS doesn't have a version of hell, kind of like the Jehovah's Witnesses don't have hell either. And so are you asking us if you should use that argument with people that don't believe it? Or are you, I mean, I don't understand what your question is.
Well, okay, because I think I have a basis there, because, I mean, because the Book of Mormon constantly talks about people being thrust down to hell, and when they say, well, it's not exactly... the Book of Mormon, their Book of Mormon talks about people being thrust down to hell, but they argue that it's not really hell, it's a self-inflicted hell, and that their lowest state of hell, their lowest kingdom, they believe in different kingdoms.
Okay, then maybe the argument you should be having with them is, well, why doesn't the Book of Mormon say what it means? I mean, you know, if they're trying to sort of dance around the obvious meaning of that text, but... yeah.
I just think if they have some weird afterlife thing, and if they're if they are uniform and saying that, you know, this isn't what it means, and they don't take it to mean that, if their tradition is different than what you feel it plainly says, you're not going to get very far trying to tell them what their book means. They're just, if that's, you got to go with how they view it. It's like when we do on the show. We'll tell somebody, tell us what you believe and why you believe it. They may call themselves a Christian, but they may have beliefs that are, you know, weird interpretations of something that's in the Bible that, you know, maybe I've never even heard before. But I have to go with what they're telling me they believe, and not how I interpret. I can't sit there and tell them, no, you have to believe what I think this says. If they don't, they don't. I have to go with what they believe.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so, I mean, really, they're, in some sense, they're kind of making up their own religion, or they're kind of picking and choosing the bits of the Book of Mormon that they think are good and throwing away the rest. So...
That they really do.
Yeah, what, oh, you think they secretly do believe in hell?
No, they just... They cherry pick.
Yeah.
Verses,
okay, I see what you mean.
They pick verses that are nice, and verses they don't like. They say, well, we'll never understand it. There's some higher meaning there. So,
I mean, if you want to have that conversation, then focus on the bits that it seems they're making up, like things you don't agree with and maybe aren't in the Book of Mormon, and say, well, that's not in your book, so how did you come to decide that? And why would I think that's true?
And this would also only be important if you're interested in learning more about what they believe, because, I mean, the differences in doctrines and the arguments about whose doctrines are better or worse is something that happens within church communities. So you have different sects that argue about who's right about the Bible, who's interpreting this Bible verse right. I don't feel a need to engage in that. I don't get in there and try to determine which of them has a good interpretation of the Bible. I have my ideas about what I think it's saying, and some people are going to agree and some are not. But my whole point with engaging with a theist who is willing to talk or wants to talk would be, does a God exist? I really don't care what your doctrines are. I'm not interested in what you think about this entire platform that you've built on your God belief. I want to know why you believe in God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
All right. Well,
cool.
Thanks and good luck with those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
Great. Thank you for taking my call. Bye.
Sure.
Patrick in Minneapolis, and we're running out of time. This may or may not be the last call. No, wait. It's probably not. Go ahead.
I'll make it quick.
All right.
I'll make it quick. I just am kind of wondering if you've ever been presented the argument that clearly God wrote the Bible to separate the reasonable and rational people because it's so, unethical, immoral, violent.
Matt has actually described that on the show.
Good.
Yeah.
And then, I find that, if a theist came up to heaven, he'd be like, no, you actually believe in that, go sit on a dark cloud and think about it or something. But is an atheist the same as a secular person?
is an atheist the same as a secular person?
Yeah.
What's a secular person?
Well, one that has no God.
Well,
In that
if that's
sense,
how
yeah.
you define secular, now secular and atheist are not the same thing. But if you use the term secular to mean someone who doesn't believe a God exists, that would be an atheist. But not everyone is going to agree with that definition of secular.
Gotcha. And then last thing, I have a 21-month-old, and we agreed we're going to take her, or she's going to be raised religiously. Maybe not on my wishes, but I feel it's good too that she is able to branch out with everything. Do you know of what's the most progressive branch in Christianity?
Why does it have to be Christianity? You could take her to like a Unitarian church.
Right. Oh, I mean, I will as we get older. But my wife is she's a theist, and she's set on Christianity. So
has your wife traded anything to you for this concession?
Just endless love.
She owes you that anyway as her wife.
Yeah, don't you give her that? I think that's not a not a trade.
And I should say,
we talked about it in length before we got to this point, and I think it's going to be a positive in the respect she's going to be having educated arguments when she does realize that it is just kind of a fairy tale.
Okay, but I think you should definitely not shy away from directly telling your daughter, I don't believe this stuff you're learning at church, because if your wife gets to be the one who brings her to her meetings all the time where they tell her this stuff is true, then you're the counterbalance here.
Right. And I mean, and that's the thing. I see it as a positive. She's going to have both sides. I'm an extremely proud atheist. I do label myself as a secular humanist, just for whatever terms like that. But so and then she can see that and see those sides, and I'm going to be with her every step of the way, taking notes, asking questions, and definitely not going to be having that's why I was wondering. Obviously, of a Christianity branch that doesn't believe in creationism, clearly doesn't maybe take the Bible as literal. And I was wondering because I'm not too savvy with it, but I mean, wondering maybe if you've heard of one, or maybe there's a new one that is pretty progressive.
I don't think we're the authorities on which church you should go to. I guess, as far as I'm aware, like Episcopalians tend to be softer than, let's say, Lutherans or Calvinists.
Well, I mean, shouldn't your wife, if she's the one that wants the kid to do this, shouldn't she pick a branch?
Yeah, because she's the one who wants this to happen at all, so why doesn't she come up with the ideas and bounce them off you, and you can have sort of veto power?
Well, with the talks that we've had, she even said herself, she's like, I know you clearly can't prove God exists, but I like what it brings to me and all that stuff, so, and she's like, I understand, that God didn't create the earth, that, all these things, we're 14.7 billion years old, the universe. So she's cool to that fact.
Does she go to church?
Do I?
Does she?
Not still. That's the thing. I mean, she's more.
Then why does she want to bring the kid to church? This doesn't make any sense.
If it's up to me, I'm going to repeat my advice. Unitarian church. Pick a Unitarian church. Your wife will get some spiritual stuff out of it. You will get some camaraderie and not overt God stuff out of it. Everybody wins. Do that.
Yeah, universal Unitarian. Go for it.
Okay. I like that. Well, so, I mean, that's the thing.
All right, we're out of time, though.
Yep. Have a good day.
Thank
you. Right.
Your show's awesome. Keep up the good work.
Thanks to our crew, and we're headed for Threadgills pretty soon. We'll talk to a couple more people after the break, Tracie willing. And thanks, everybody, for watching. See you next week.